Hi everybody, welcome to today's masterclass. We're going to be doing a peacock butterfly. I took this picture in the garden at the last gallery a few weeks ago, and he was being so brilliant at staying still that I was able to get a decent picture. So I thought that we'd attempt this in pastel today. If you don't want to do it in pastel, you have the option of doing it in watercolour or acrylic or anything that you've got to hand. I will mention regularly throughout the masterclass how you can do it, how you can adapt it to do it in watercolour or acrylic. But have a go at the pastel. It's a really nice medium. It's very much hands-on. You use your fingers and you feel sort of physically attached to the pastel, and it's a nice medium to work with. The finished picture looks like this. Ooh, if I back up, or this if you want it the right way up. Alright, so hopefully you'll end up with something that looks similar to that. The only problem you may come across is that you may not have pastel paper. I've used watercolour paper instead because I didn't have any pastel paper today, and you may not have the colours that you need for the specific butterfly. So today is a peacock butterfly, so check your pastel sets and make sure that you've got the right colours first before you start. And then if you haven't got the right colours for that butterfly, go online, have a look for a butterfly that you have got the right colours for, and just replace it. Okay, so I hope you enjoy it. Really nice to see you all again. Thanks everybody for your comments and support and help so far. You've sent me some feedback which has been really useful. So please continue to do that. Please keep asking questions. If there's anything specific you want to do, I mean, I've got, I need to be prepared, that I've programmed all the way up till Christmas. However, if there's something specific that you want to learn about, then let me know, and I can always change things around and move things to next year and things like that, because I'm going to carry on doing these tutorials, these masterclass tutorials from home, as well as teaching back in Carmarthen, because I know that some of you, well, quite a few of you actually, who have registered are not from Carmarthen. I've got 2 people in Greece, I've got 1 person in Finland, and trying to make it to the classes is just not going to happen. So I'm going to continue doing these. I'll run these alongside the classes. Okay, hope you're all safe, and I hope you enjoyed today's masterclass. Okay, these are my pastels. They're very good quality pastels. They're unison colour, soft pastels made in England. I was given these very generously because these, I mean, the big chunky ones are about £3 to £4 each, and these, a couple of quid, the smaller ones. But they're excellent, and they come, as you can see, in a range of colours. I've just tipped them all out because I've discovered that my boxes are corroding, so I'm going to find a new container for them. But they generally come in box sets of blues, reds, pinks, oranges. They're just gorgeous. There's even a range of browns there. If you haven't got these pastels, it doesn't matter. You've got a wide array of pastels available to you. I mean, these are just sort of cheap. Let me just put those in there. These here are just cheap pastels from W.H. Smith's, I think they were, just a sort of student range, and they came in a box of different colours. You can use chalks, you can use children's chalks. All the well-known brands produce their own pastels, so it really depends on how much money you want to spend. The only difference is that these are soft pastels, and you have a different kind called Conti pastels, and I've got this set here because I use this brown a lot when I'm life drawing. And these are Conti pastels, and they tend to be square and they're a lot harder, so you can do detail with these, which is really useful. So I have a set of browns, but I also have a set of blacks going through to white for details of these pastels. They're really good, well worth the money, and because they're harder than the soft pastels, they last a long time. Okay, so just basically use whatever you want, but make sure that they're chalk pastels, not oil pastels, because oil pastels are entirely different. Okay, so I'm just going to move the camera so that it focuses on my paper, like that. Okay, I'm hoping that that's in shot. Yeah, okay. So, along with your pastels, you might find it useful to use white chalk and charcoal for detail again. So if you've got some of that to hand, then use that. Another thing is this blending tool, which I use for all sorts of different things. It's called a colour shaper, but sometimes they're just called blending tools. They have a rubber end on them. They come in different sizes, and they're really good if you don't like using your fingers to blend with. You just clean the end off with a rag, and saying that, have lots of rags available. I use old socks. I also have a brush for just brushing off excess chalk. Rubber. I've prepared my paper with a masking tape again. I'm just using watercolour paper because I have a few bits that have been spoiled by various things, eaten by silverfish, trod on by flies, and obviously I can't use this for watercolour anymore, so I'm going to use it for pastel, mainly because it's got a tooth. That means it's rough and it will hold the pastel really well. My hands are very dirty today. I've been painting and also doing a bit of gardening, so please excuse my hands. So you can use watercolour paper, you can use sugar paper, you can use anything that has a texture to it. Don't use cartridge paper because it tends to be a little bit smooth, and the chalk, you can use it, it does work, but the chalk tends to sort of find it difficult to stick to the surface. So make sure that you've got the right paper. And then of course you've got a huge range of pastel papers available to you, from the very cheap, you can pick up pads in W.H. Smith's, The Works, The Range, for not too much money, right through to really expensive pastel matte paper, which is beautiful and definitely worth the money, but it's expensive. So again, you know, it's down to you as to how much you want to spend. Anyway, I took this beautiful, moving on, I took this beautiful picture of a butterfly in my garden on some buddleia white, no it's not, yeah it is, it's a white buddleia I think, the other day, and I thought ideal, and I printed it off and I stuck it on my wall, and again the silverfish have eaten it and the slugs have crawled across it. So these are the problems with working in a studio in a garden. It's full of critters. Anyway, you can see they've just had the right good old chomp along here. Anyway, so this butterfly, I took the picture and it was hanging upside down. So if you want to do it the right way up, then that's grand, but obviously you need to turn the flower upside down as well, and the leaves and things like that. I'm just going to do it the way it was, which is upside down, but like I said, artistic license again. If you would rather it was that way up, then turn it. Alright, what we're going to do first is we're going to deal with background. I haven't drawn out the butterfly because I don't want to draw it out and then have the pastel go over it and then have to draw it again. So we're going to do the background, and then we're going to fix the background, and we're going to fix it using some hairspray. You can use fixative. There's an expensive range of fixative, artist fixative for pastels. You've got money, go and buy it, but I just use hairspray. It works just as well, and it just puts a coat on top of the layer that you've worked on and stops that from blending with anything else. I'll show you how to do that later. Okay, so we're going to do a macro background similar to this section here, which is very fuzzy and blended. Okay, and we're also going to put some leaves on, but we're going to do that in a minute. So what I want is a sort of range of greens. Now I know that some of you might not have a range of greens. You might only have 2 shades of green in your set. So, you know, just work with what you've got. I want to get rid of this white paper, so I'm just going to put some greens down in whatever fashion I want around this area here. I'm just going to work in this top section to begin with, and you can see because these pastels are really good quality, it goes on really thick, and you know, you get what you pay for basically, and the pastels really adhere well to the surface. The other thing to just mention is the dust that comes off of these pastels. It can be quite irritating for the lungs, so preferably what you should do is pick up your sheet of paper once it gets a little bit full of dust, pastel dust, and just shake it into a bin. So if you have a bin next to you ready, then shake it into that bin. Can you see how loose I'm being here? I'm not really paying too much attention to where the greens are. I'm looking a little bit, I'm looking, and then I'm putting a mark down, but I'm just being very loose because basically all we're going to do is this. So we're now going to smudge, and this is the point where people get a bit irritated. So you can buy they're like smudging tools, and what they are rolled up sheets of paper. You'll see them amongst the drawing section in like places like the Works, and they're just sort of, they're sticks like this, and they're rolled up piece of paper, so you can actually make them yourself, but they're brilliant if you don't like getting your fingers dirty. Some people don't like the sound of it even, so, but I love it. So have a little bit of fun with it, get dirty. This is one of the great things about being creative, is that you can get your hands involved and you can really feel the pastel and the surface that you're working with. So the other alternative to doing this, sorry, just knocked the thing again, I think it's okay, is to get some coloured, see, look, isn't that gorgeous? So is to get some coloured paper, which you can get lots of in pastel. You can get coloured pastel paper. So, you know, you might find that you've got a book with some different shades of green in it, and you don't have to do this bit, but you'll still have to add some different tones in there just to create some interest. So go in with extra dark shades up here, and like I said, if you haven't got dark greens, light greens, all that sort of thing, all you need to do is take some yellow. Now I've got, what have I got? I've got several shades of yellow here. Just take some yellow and then add some blue into it and mix it together, and it will make a green. So, you know, you don't necessarily need all these different shades of green, you just need blue and yellow. Alright, so just have a bit of a play about with these different colours, mixing yellows and blues together. That bit at the back is quite dark, so I'm going to take a darker blue, and I'm going to use, so instead of using black, use a blue, and just, you can almost negative paint some shapes in like that. Can you see what I'm doing? They don't have to be perfect. Just put the outline in and just shade around them. So that'll give you a little bit of texture in the background there, and also create the effect like there are some leaves hanging down. You might be lucky enough to have some butterflies in your garden, and if so, go out, take some pictures and create some images from your own photographs. I mean, they can be a blessing, but they can also be a pain, because obviously they lay eggs all over your vegetables, and caterpillars appear all of a sudden, blessed with caterpillars. I actually caught a wasp eating a caterpillar this morning, and I just sort of thought, so they are useful after all. So, you know, just build up a little bit of texture there in the background, because we don't want too much detail, because we want the focus to be the butterfly, but you still want a little bit of something back there. Alright, so when we come forward, we've got the buddleia leaves. So we've got literally a stick, a stem that comes across up like that. Again, smudge it all in so it remains soft rather than hard. And then we've got leaves coming out. Now they're quite pale, the buddleia leaf. So, and some people find them quite difficult to draw. So if you look at the shape and work in sort of curves, then you'll get the leaf shape. Draw a few in, maybe like this, paying particular attention to whether the leaf curls or not, or if it's a long thin one like that one there. I mean, there'll be several leaves within that area, but let's focus on, so I've got a grey here, and I'm going to introduce a little bit of grey into this leaf. If you haven't got a grey, then what you can use is a bit of white. It will blend with, until you fix it, it will blend with what's underneath. So just be aware of that. So you end up with a greeny grey. Use your little finger for little details, or use the blending tool if you prefer. So that's so now we've got some dust, right, and the dust is getting in the way, so I'm just going to sweep it over, can you see, like that. And the reason why we use a brush is because it's gentle on the paper, and also doesn't rub in too much like your finger would. If you try to do this with your fingers, you would end up smudging it in, and obviously erasing some of your work, some of the effort that you've put in so far. Alright, so into that buddleia leaf. Now the underside of the buddleia leaf is slightly greener, so let's see now, we've got a green, yeah, this sort of colour. So I'm just going to make that stronger by putting a little bit of extra green in there. It's actually the same colour as the green that's underneath, but because you put another layer on, it gives it more definition. So again, put the pastel on and then smudge. And again, because we want to keep these reasonably in the background. We're not going to do too much work to these leaves. You can blow this pastel dust off, but again, you're sending it up into your atmosphere and down onto all your furniture and things like that. So just be aware of that. Like I said, if I hadn't stuck this down, I could lift it. Actually, I can still lift it because I have stuck it onto my cutting mat. So I can still lift this work off and tap it on into my bin. It's a huge problem when we do this in class, because obviously you do need to get rid of the excess pastel, but it's really a sort of health and safety issue with regard to especially people who've got asthma and things like that. So just be aware of the problems that you might experience as a result of too much dust in the air. That leaf there is slightly in the background, so I'm not going to put as much pigment on that one. Okay, and we've got the buddleia itself. Now, the buddleia is white, and I don't have, well, I have, oh no, I have got a white. Oh no, this is actually a grey, but it'll probably come off as a white. So what I've got is just some cheap, this is just board chalk, a school board chalk, and I'm just going to work in a couple of sticks on this buddleia plant. So just use stripes like this. We're only going to come down to there because the butterfly is going to cover most of it, and make a little spike at the end. Put some that look like they're coming, the chalk will break because it's cheap. It hasn't got as much body as these ones. As you can see, they didn't break. Press harder for some more defined structures. Okay, and with this, right, I'm just going to just push my pastels away. I'm just going to tap this off into the bin. So I just pick it up and go to my bin. You can hear I'm giving it a good tap. And there we go. I'm back in. Okay, just make sure I'm in the right place. Okay. Alright, so now I've got really dirty hands. The last thing I want to do is put my dirty fingers onto this white area. So if you just rub off, I mean, you can go and wash your hands, but if you just rub off your finger, and then you can go in and just pat it in a little, because what we're going to do is we're going to put some detail on that afterwards. Okay, so for now, let's see, how are we doing with this? I'd like a little bit more white on my stem, because you can always work into this afterwards, but I just wanted to get rid of some of the background so that we can get our butterfly in. Okay, so we're going to do stuff like that, outline things, but we're going to do that later. Okay, so if I just get my hairspray, okay, so I've just got some Tesco Firm Hold spray here, 24-hour active. Again, if you would rather do this outside, then do it outside if you're sensitive, but just give it a spray. Shake the can before you use it, and all that does is it'll just fix it in place. Oh, it's spluttering a bit, never mind. I think my nozzle might have gone a bit. Okay, so just give it a covering of spray and then let that dry off. Okay, so I'll show you how to do the next thing in the next portion of film. Okay, so the next step is to take, if you've got a piece of charcoal like this, just break it so it's more manageable, and we're going to draw the butterfly. So he comes down sort of at this angle, so what I tend to do is just make a mark more or less where he is, like that's the body there. Okay, the head stops here like that, and the body is to sort of here, but the wings will come up like this. Now he's had a piece of wing bitten or torn out, so just be aware of that. So his wing goes up and then comes down. So I'm gonna repair his wing. That goes up and then it comes down. Try and get it as symmetrical as possible. If you're not used to freehand drawing like I'm doing, then you can be a bit more careful. Just plan the drawing out loosely before you actually draw it on, and then comes up and then in and then down into that lovely curve like that. But saying that, you know, your pastel is, the undercoat which we've hairsprayed is almost fixed now. Almost, I say almost. But the rest of it you can actually rub out with a rubber or a putty rubber, more importantly. Right, let's just draw the body on. So we've got the central section. It's sort of conicular shapes like that, like a vase. And then there's two bits for the eyes with a central section, and then that's where his proboscis and his antennae come out. And then we've got another sort of area there, and then we've got the back of the body. Okay, so that's roughly it. I mean, if it's too big or too small or whatever, you know, it doesn't matter. Just go with it. I'm just going to put in the main structures. Again, don't be too worried about getting everything perfect. Just roughly, these butterflies are all different, even though they're all the same breed. They'll all have slightly different marks on them, which will identify them. Okay, so I've got the eyes in there. I'll just put another eye there and another eye there, just to remind me that that's where they go. Okay, so there's the main structure. You can see that that's roughly in place. So with pastel, and as you can see, you can put lights on top of darker colours. So you don't have to work like you do in watercolour, where you have to work light to dark, or in acrylic where you work dark to light. So if you were not able to get hold of any pastels and you wanted to do it in watercolour, what I would do is watercolour paper, and then I would draw out the butterfly, and I would do the background wet in wet. That means that you wet the paper first and then you drop the colour in. So using the same colours that we've used here, but work around the butterfly. Do not cover the whole background in green. Work around it, okay? So that background would be wet in wet. And then you would paint your butterfly wet on dry, okay, using the different colours. And you work from light to dark. So you'd start with the lighter white bits, go maybe into the creamy colours, into the reds, and then into the darker tones and blues and things like that, okay? Now if you're painting in acrylic, it doesn't really matter which way round you do it, but again, I would work around the butterfly. I would do the background first, and with acrylic you work dark to light, so you put your darker tones in and then you put your lighter tones in on top, okay? So I would do the background, and then I would do the butterfly in acrylic. All right. If you've got any more questions with regard to different media, then just, drop me an email, say, oh, actually I want to use acrylic inks or whatever. All right. So with pastel, like I said, you don't have to worry too much, but I do suggest that you work light to dark. You can work the other way around, but you can do that. But however, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the reddy tones and the orangey browny tones of these wings, okay, because they're the main dominant colour. And I've got, what have I got here? Doesn't actually say what colour it is. I've got a series of reds that I could work with. It would just be a matter of trying them out until I got a colour that I liked. So I'm just going to block this wing in with this red colour, and it's quite dark actually, so I'm going to pick up a slightly lighter red and I'm going to work in with that. Actually, that's better. Okay, so again, don't worry about the detail for now, just block in these main tones of colour. I know that we've got whites and blacks and such forth on these wings, but we'll put those in later. Now I'm going to put a touch of red under here, just a touch, and I'm going to take we've got like it's like a sienna colour here, which is a reddy brown, and I'm going to use that in this area here. I'm also going to put that on the body of the butterfly. Okay, and just build it up really slowly. Enjoy it. Don't over fuss. We could probably do with some of that around the edges of here as well, and on the body of the butterfly, like this. Okay, and again I'm going to take my finger and I'm just going to start to smudge this in. So you can see that because of the fact that I fixed the colour underneath, you can see it's not blending with what's going on underneath. So that's the benefit of fixing with that hairspray or with fixative, is that you can work away without worrying that the colour underneath is going to come up and start mixing and making your colours muddy, which is not what we want, is it? The last thing any artist wants is muddy colours. Okay, so again I'm going to just quickly lift that up and tap it off in the bin. Now the reason why I didn't brush it off is because I don't want to rub this into this surface behind, as little as possible anyway. Alright, so I'm just going to build up colours like that. So I know there's a bit of orange in this browny tone, so I'm just going to put some orange in, and then I'll darken it up. Just go with the shapes that are being made. Don't just work vertically, work in diagonals, in curves, whatever you need to do to get the result that you want. Just going to put a touch there. Now because this is a different kind of chalk, this is the cheaper version, it may not rub in as well as my more professional chalks, so just be aware of what you're using. I'm going to use a little bit of this yellow. I've got this sort of mustard yellow colour, and I'm going to put that around the body like that and just work it up into that section there, around this body area here. It's got a sort of almost like a green fuzziness to it. So again, just rub it in. You're just building it up really slowly. Okay. Now underneath this bit here, there is some lighter tone. So I'm going to use that, what have I got? There's a white there. I'm going to put some white down initially. It's like a pinky tone actually, that we've got underneath this edge. Like that. And then I'll lay the black on top. I'm going to come round with this. Again, manage with the colours that you've got. If you haven't got a pink or a cream or whatever colours that I'm using here, then please don't worry, just use the colours that you've got in your set. Okay, you'll end up with a butterfly no matter what. Actually, that pink was nice, especially for up here. So we've got that eye coming down like that, and this one goes up like that. I'm just putting the eyes in just so I don't lose them, because I run the risk of losing the colour once I start putting darker tones in. Now I want a brown of some sort. Again, I haven't got any brown in a small stick, so I'm restricted to these big chunky colours that I've got here. And I'm just going to clean them up a bit because, oh look, see that just crumbled. Must be a little bit old. So I'm going to go in with this brown now, and I'm going to try and outline these wings with this brown colour. Go carefully again, round the outside, down the centre, because this bit here projecting is quite dark, like this. Again, round the outside, like that. Along the top of this wing, we'll put brown. The reason why I'm not using black is because I don't want it to be too dark as yet. I just want to control the black, because black is a sort of dead colour, so you want to use as little of it as possible. So if you can darken something up without using black, then use a different colour. Use a brown or a dark blue or something along those lines. Just going to put the central body section in there. Okay, now got myself in a bit of a mess, so I'm just going to shake these bits off. Okay, so little finger, let me just make sure I'm in shot, yes, little finger, and I'm just going to start with the body. I'm just going to smooth that into a shape. There's his head, and then I'm going to use the colour that I've got on here just to, so again, try and control these edges as far as possible, and the way you do that is by doing, can you see, I'm just doing a continuous movement. So rather than picking your finger up and putting it back down again, if you can, just keep your finger on and control by dragging. You see that? This bit is different, but on the edges, keep your finger on as much as possible. So it's one sweep rather than a lot of jagged movements. Okay, let's just smooth that in. Okay, I'm just going to pick it up and shake it off again. Blow it off if you need to. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. The butterfly is nearly, nearly filled in. So we're going to put the blue in now. So the blue is very vibrant, and I'm lucky enough to have some really strong blues in this colour set that I've got here. But again, any colour will do. I mean, you don't have to do this type of butterfly even. You could do a different type of butterfly. If you've only got colours for a red admiral, for example, then you could make it into a red admiral instead. Just go looking on the internet for the colours and the breeds, and you'll find the different pictures that you can download. Okay, got a dirty little finger, so I'm going to use the next finger along. I'm just going to rub that in there, just a touch, just to fix it down. Okay, right, so next thing is a bit of orange, I think. Do I have any orange? Yes, I have an orange. Oranges tend to come in the cheaper versions, so you should be alright with an orange. So we're just going to put in some orange sort of stripy bits here. Let's try the other one. The cheaper orange is better actually. So these wings are structured in such a way that they feel stripy. So make them stripy. Have close observation of the structure of the wing. I'm going to put a few more orangey bits in there. Fill in that section. Just to give you some highlights. Fill that section in. Around there like that. Same there. Around there. We've got a bit of orange coming down in there like that. Okay, so we've got our white, we've got our, so now maybe we can start putting some blacks in. So I've got a hard, is that black? Yeah, it's black. Okay, I've got a fairly hard pastel here. I'm going to go into the tail section. Now this bit you probably won't be rubbing in too much, so we need to leave this almost like almost as a defined line. So you can see in that bottom section there that there are quite a few fine lines. Now use the edge. You'll always have an edge on a pastel. Rather than using the stubby bit, use the edge to create these lines that are coming up that are fine, like that. So turn your pastel until you get to a sharpened edge. You can even sharpen a pastel if you have to, but try and get a nice fine edge on your pastel. Even break it if you have to. Again, we've got some body marks here. And then his eyes are quite... You could even do this with a bit of charcoal if it's too difficult to put down with a fine edge. And do it with a bit of charcoal. See, if you were to take a really thin, like this, a thin bit of charcoal, and you could put that really fine line in there for the antennae, like that. But that's something that we should really do at the end. Okay, so in with the black again. We've got a mark here. Let's put that in. We're going round. I'm just going to try, let's have a see, got different, around the outside of this structure. The other thing you can use if the chalks are a little bit sort of falling apart on you is to use some pastel pencils, and what that gives you is the ability to be able to sharpen an edge and make it really fine to work with. So a pastel pencil, or even a charcoal pencil. I've got charcoal pencils in my set that I could use if I wanted a little bit more precision in the detail that I'm putting down, especially around this area here. But the reason why I'm working in A3 rather than A4 is because of the fact that it's difficult to get really minute detail the smaller the piece of paper you're working with. So I recommend you work as big as you can with pastel. So if you've got A3 sized paper, then use that rather than A4. And the other option is to stick a couple of pieces of A4 together. Put this on the other side now. So again, close observation of the way that those wings are coloured and the different forms that are there. See, he's got, oh, he's got, yeah, he has got 2 marks there, hasn't he? Like so. Totally symmetrical. Now if you feel, because of the nature of the chalk, if you feel your hands are starting to dry out on you, what I recommend is that you go and wash them and give them a little bit of a clean, and then you'll feel a little bit better. Round you go. But all of a sudden you can see this butterfly really popping out of the background. Put some dark tone there. Okay, now you can sort of come in here and put some darker bits in there if you want to, but just be aware of what you've got on your fingers. Try your best to concentrate and make sure that you don't put brown fingers on top of red chalk, because you'll just end up with a browny red colour then, and you'll be stuck. I'm just going to shake this off again. Just dropped a chalk. If you drop something, pick it up, because otherwise you walk into it, especially if you've got a carpet, you end up with big chalk stains. And this stuff, it dyes your fingers really easily, so just be aware of that. Okay, so what else do we need to do? We've got our blues in there, we've got browns in there. I'm going to take a little bit of this broken up chalk that collapsed on me earlier on. I'm just going to take a bit of it and just put a bit more around it. In fact, that's too soft, that stuff. I think I'm going to leave that as it is. Okay, let's have a look and see what we've got in here. going to work into this area here. I just want to pick up that orange again, I think. I want a bit more orange in here. Just to bring it a little bit into... I'm just going to use my finger just to smudge it in a touch. Just want a bit more of a highlight there. There is a separation somehow along here. I don't know how that is, but right, so I want to strengthen the white up again because I want the white to be stronger. I'm going to increase the orange on these edges here. Oops, sorry, just knocked the camera with my big old head. Okay, just a quick slurp of tea. I'm just going to put these antennae back in a little. Oops. And like I said, I'm just using a stick of, a little shard of charcoal there. We've got a little bobble on the end. Just blow it off. And I notice that we've got a highlight. And it, you know, it's difficult to do little tiny details like this. So if you can sort of shape a piece of chalk, more or less to the shape. I mean, like I said, you can do this with a sharpener or a knife even. Just going to put a touch of yellow on this body area here, just to make it feel a little bit fluffier, like that. And it does come round here, doesn't it, like that. And then up the side, I've got an area coming across here, and up the side. Again, just manage with the colours that you've got. If you haven't got this yellowy tone, then use something else. You can see that the yellow is sort of combining with what's underneath the section that you're working on, so it sort of brings it to a different colour because it's blending with what's underneath. But allow that to happen. A bit more of that actually. Just a touch of yellow in that section there. Just gives it a little bit more, makes it feel a little bit fluffier somehow. Okay, I'm just going to smudge these black areas in so that I make them nice and dense, very carefully, because we don't want them to blend too much. We don't want them to smudge into the background too much and make a mess. So just carefully blend them. Okay, right, now in with some more charcoal. A fine stick of charcoal. And I'm just going to put in some details. So I can see that there is a line here. The benefit of charcoal is that it gives you a mark but without being too dark. Yeah? So rather than it looking like an outline, it sort of puts a mark onto your work. So that comes down there. Like that. Okay, you can see that happening, can't you? In the same way that we can put a line coming up each one of these areas here, like that. Very loosely. We can outline the edges of the wings now. If you've got a slightly darker piece of charcoal, then that would be beneficial. So I'm just going to put some rough edges on this wing edge here. Just some rough marks like this, and having some lines coming down into the wing. Twisting my charcoal so that I don't end up with just a stubby edge. I want the charcoal to sort of solidify these areas, but also remain quite sharp, and the way you do that is by twisting it. So once it gets a little bit stumpy, twist it around. Once you've done a line, because that edge will be worn then, twist it around. And you can see how that is making a difference just to the clarity of that edge. So if you've got a pastel pencil that you can sharpen really fine, then that will also work really well. But if you haven't, then just keep twisting the edges, or even using the opposite side like I've got here, just so that it remains fine in detail. Now, have we missed anything? I'm still not happy about the darkness of these. Somehow they need to be blacker, and that might be difficult with some just standard chalks, but let's try this. Yeah, see, the quality of this pastel gives you a darker finish. I'm just going to go in there with a little bit of that, just to darken it up a bit. Just be wary of using too much black though. Don't want to sort of spoil it with the weight of the black, because it ends up making it look more and more like a child's drawing if you're not careful. So just be careful with the amount of black you put onto any picture. Okay, tapping it off again. Right, let's see how we're doing. Okay, so nearly happy with the butterfly. I'm just wondering if I take some iridescent, I've got some iridescent blue here. Just put a dot of that in there. Again, you might find that your colours vary according to how your printer behaves as well, so just be aware of that. I'm just going to use my colour shaper here, so just to sort of push that in, gives you a little bit more precision with regard to the blending. It's a bit finer than your stubby finger. It just gives you a little bit more control. Notice how I went from blending the blue to the black. Okay, right, so what's next? Okay, so let's start working on the background. I think the butterfly is pretty much there. Excuse me. So what we need to do is just bring out these leaves. So we go to this one first. Now, rather than using black again, what I'm going to use is a bit of yellow. I'm just going to put an edge on this leaf here, like that. Okay, and then I'm going to go in with a bit more green, just darken up. In fact, I'll probably do a little bit more darker as well, just darken up the underside of this leaf here. And again, that side. Oops, see, that was me just putting in my brown dirty finger. So if you accidentally do that, then just go over it again with your white. Use clean fingers. It might work to your benefit, you never know, but just be careful. Let's see now, just wipe that off, wipe it off on a towel, start to blend it back in again. Okay, same under there. Now we've got some powder there on the, oh no, that's just coming through. Okay, that's just coming through the from the underneath. Let me just get my red again. Put some more red on there where it's coming through. Okay. So on the buddleia leaf we've got veins, but they are white. So what we're going to do is just put them in a more defined way, using a sharp edge if you can find one. Now this turns a bit, the edge comes up there and it curves over like that, so it should look a bit like that. Okay, another one there, another one there, again a vein down the middle, and then various veins coming off the side. The one in the background doesn't really have any, well it does, but because it's in the background you can't see them. So this, now this leaf has folded over a little bit. Make sure you go through, be careful with your antennae. You can see there's another leaf folding over there like that. I'm just going to put that in. Right, the buddleia itself, let's just put a bit of work into that. This just gives you an idea of context really. Where is this butterfly? What is he doing? And as you all must know by now, the buddleia is probably one of its favourite flowers, isn't it? They recommend that you plant them in your garden to attract the butterflies and improve the diversity of your garden. So we've got a few flecks just coming out from behind the back of the butterfly there, and some here as well. So just pop those in. Just be careful of your edges like that. And we've got a sort of blurry bit of buddleia at the back there. So I'm just going to put that in, and then I'm just going to smudge it a little, just so that it sends it backwards. So just smudge it in by patting a little like that. Okay, same with, oops, see that? Just go over it with you like that. Okay, if you want to put some extra leaves in, you can. Don't use your little finger like I just did, which is dirty. Something not quite right down here. I'm not sure what's going on down underneath, but let's just lift this up a little by colouring it in. Okay, so to define a little bit on the buddleia, we've got a sort of an acid green colour, which you may or may not have in your set again, but just pick out the odd projection. Just put a bit of this acid green in like that, just the odd one. Again, you don't want to put too much detail into this section because you want the focus to be the butterfly, but you can see that that helps. It's also got a little bit of sort of orangey tone in there at times, so just put a little fleck here and there of orange, just not too much, don't want to go overboard. And then have I got a white? This is white enough, right? So I'm just going to put my pastel down and I'm just going to rotate it like this, can you see? And that will give you the sort of heads of the, so you could use a pastel or chalk, just the old-fashioned chalk, it'll work just as well, just to give you some sort of heads of the flower projections. Okay. What next? What we're going to do is we're just going to darken up the background a little bit. So I've got a dark green here, and I'm just doing this so that is it dark green? Yeah, I think it is, yeah. So I'm just going to do a bit of this just so that it projects the butterfly forward a little. So we can see there's a leaf coming down here and into that background like this. And at the same time we can almost do some negative painting around some leaf areas. So like I've done there, just define. And also I want to come down into this area here, but I need to be really careful. So I'm just going to put some colour nearby, but not quite right up to. So again, you're going to smooth this in, and remember that the underneath is fixed, so it's unlikely to blend with what's going on up there in the background. Be careful of your edges on your butterfly. Ideally, you should use a blending tool around the edges here, just so that you don't lose the edges on your butterfly. Can you see how that works? Just gives you a little bit more precision, and you can almost draw with it then. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that now just to define these areas in here, but also around these buddleia heads, just because I don't want to lose the nature of those little projections. So just bring it down. And I'm just using the dirty, the colour that's on the end of the blending tool, really, just to bring a little bit of dirty colour down in around those heads. Just bring it in like that. Again down here, I'm just going to put it up into that section there, but then I'm just going to draw it down into and around this buddleia head here. Now you've watched a lot of blending here, so I'm hoping that you will have forwarded through bits of this to sort of alleviate the boredom a bit. But you know, it might be that you enjoy watching me work away, bringing out these areas. It's almost like using a paintbrush, these blending sticks. They're quite useful actually. You can pick up a little bit of extra colour from somewhere and just move it around if you need to, like that. Just draw into it. Just put a touch more here, I think. So we're coming towards the end of this tutorial. You get the different techniques with regard to blending. Like I said, if you find the process of blending irritating, then just use one of these tools for the whole thing, you know. But it's not easy. Pastel is really it can be quite difficult. You can see I'm just picking it up onto my blending tool now, where I know that I need some marks, and I'm just using that to define a little bits and bobs in there. Okay, now then, what else? Okay, let's see if we can draw these antennae on a bit stronger. So I'm just using the pastel, I'm just taking it off with I think I'll be better with a bit more charcoal, or even a charcoal pencil. Let me just try a charcoal again. I just want to redefine these antennae. They're very fine. I mean, you could even use a pen if necessary. Whoops, sorry, knocked it again. Okay, and down here, I just want to let's put a little bit of a nicer green. Did we use that green? Oh, that green would do. Let's just put in a couple of extra leaves just in this foreground here, because I think this area here is a little bit devoid of content. So let's just put a few leaves. Just very basic structures, but not anything too detailed, because again we want to be able to enjoy the butterfly, not necessarily focus on the foliage. But I do understand that this needs a little bit more info because it's in the foreground. So a few extra leaves. I know around this plant that there are holly bushes and bay trees, so you know there would be other dark leaves around it. Again, go and have a look at your garden, see what you can see. Let me just pick up that dark green there. I'm just going to put some dark green in here underneath these sections just to define a little bit. What happened there? Yeah, put a bit there. Okay, so you get the idea. If you want to put in more detail into the leaves, then go ahead. If you find that your colours are mixing and they're sort of difficult to control, then fix with hairspray and then go and have a go on the fixed layer on top. You'll find it's easier to control the detail. Okay, let's see, are we happy with this? I think we're more or less happy with that. So I'm just going to fix it again. I'm hoping my hairspray is functioning a bit better. Yeah, okay. So blow. Whoops, there goes a piece of charcoal. Right, blow it off or tap it off and then fix with hairspray. You'll find that the hairspray or fixative, whatever you're using, will bring out the colours, as you can see. Okay, lid there, and then I'm just going to, if I just give it a quick, just need a slurp of a cuppa. I'm just going to give it a quick hair dry. The hairspray dries really quickly. I just wanted to take this tape off so you can see the finished article. Again, when you're taking the tape off, just be careful that you don't then move any of the pigment onto your white edges. Not that that's important because you're going to frame onto those, but it's just nice to have a clean edge to look at these things. I often put a mount around work for students, and it's amazing how much of a difference it makes with regard to just cleaning, having a clean defined edge to look at. Okay, so there we are. If you turn it around, it will actually work both ways, so it's up to you which way you display it. And You know, there's no reason why you couldn't add to this. Go and have a break, come back, maybe leave it a couple of days. Excuse me. Yeah, go and have a break, come back, work in a little bit more detail, maybe add some more veins to these leaves, a little bit more detail on the butterfly, but you just continue like that. Get it to a stage, and then fix it, and then work on top of it, and then fix it, and then work on top of it, fix it, and you'll see that the detail will build up. Pastel pencils, again, really useful. These Conti pencils, these Conti pastels that have a hard edge to them are really useful as well, especially for doing detail, which is what most people struggle with regard to pastel, is the fact that it's so messy and easy to move around and all that sort of thing. Okay, so enjoy. Any issues, just give me a shout, let me know. Like I said, if you're doing it in watercolour, wet the background and then do the butterfly wet on dry. If you're doing it in acrylic, work dark to light, and I would start with the background and do the butterfly at the end. Alright, enjoy, see you next week.